Our exhortation this morning will be brought to us by our brother Adam Winfrey. His subject is titled Killer Hill. And in preparation for his remarks, he's asked that we read from, again, the book of Psalms, this time Psalm 27, the first three verses. That's Psalm 27, verses 1 through 3. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? When the wicked, even mine enemies, and my foes, came upon me to eat up my flesh, they stumbled and fell. Though an host should encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war should rise against me, in this will I be confident. So reads Psalm 27, verses 1 through 3. So, excuse me, at this time we'd ask our brother Adam Winfrey if he'd come forward and exhort us on the topic, Killer Hill.
Morning, everybody. Before I begin, I moved yesterday, so I'm very tired, obviously, as people would be for moving. But I would like to say, we don't really hear this term here so much, but I have in the past, this phrase, God moments. And it means just like things sort of work out miraculously well. And it's just a way to see God in your life. So yesterday I went to go get the truck to move, and I scheduled to pick it up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I was there at 9:30 in the morning thinking, hey, I scheduled for all day, I can get whenever I want. But apparently that's not the case. And so when I got there, the truck was not there anymore. Someone else had gotten it, and I was more than a little upset. But so luckily I walked there, and luckily Brian and Sister Valerie were driving around. They came to pick me up. But things all worked out well. It turned out that most of the stuff that we moved in the mornings, we just got people's cars. And most people were only available in the morning to help me move. So had we had the truck in the morning, not everything would have fit in the truck. We wouldn't have gotten anything done. It would have been at least done a lot later. But it is sort of a God moment to me to see like all these things that were sort of chaotic in the beginning came and turned out very well in the end. And it was also very nice to have a lot of brothers and sisters there to help me out. I moved yesterday, and my talk today is in relation to moving in a sense because it goes back to my first neighborhood that I remember, and I moved there when I was 3. So I don't remember the first time I heard about Killer Hill. Either Jonathan Potter, Adam Parker, or my brother Paul was probably the one that told me about it. When I was 3, my family moved into a neighborhood just outside of Williamsburg in the unincorporated community of Lightfoot. It was 30 years ago, and the neighborhood was relatively new at the time. And the neighborhood itself used to be partly farmland, and the descendants were parceling off bits and pieces of it. My parents just happened to build a parcel, and they built their own house. The neighborhood is bordered by a small pond in the back, and the closer you get to the pond, the deeper into the neighborhood you go. You find deeper and deeper ravines and taller, steeper hills. When we just moved in, I didn't really stray too far from the house. I maybe followed my older brother Paul next door to the Potter's house, and if I was lucky, I went 2 doors and across the street further to the Parkers. And I liked Adam Parker because he had the same first name as me. And I invited him to my not 6th grade, no, 6th, my 6th birthday because his name was Adam. So that's how I work. But that similarity made him a little less intimidating than the other older kids. But I never went much further than that, only maybe for Halloween when we went trick-or-treating. But even then, we didn't make it much further than around the block because the hills and the streets were very high, and my little legs couldn't handle all the walking. It wasn't until I was quite a bit older, probably 10 or so, when I got a bike and went around the neighborhood. But even then, I never, ever, ever biked down Killer Hill. I don't remember who first told me about it. I don't know how it got its name. I don't know that either Jonathan Potter, Adam Parker, or my brother Paul, or one of the other neighborhood kids claimed to have dubbed it that. And I know that there are many debates in my youth about it. It was something that you tell kids from the other neighborhoods about on a bus, and when friends came over, you took them to see Killer Hill. I don't think that Killer Hill ever lived up to its name. I don't think it killed anyone. This isn't like a scary story where like someone dies in the end. But Killer Hill is a very long and steep hill in the neighborhood. It's a hill that if you were an adrenaline junkie kid nearby, you would totally bike down. Whenever it snowed, we'd take sleds and trash can lids to the top of the hill and hope the extra padding of snow would save us from certain doom. And when I slid down it for the first time, I needed to summon all the courage I had. But Killer Hill was also a very windy street, and it wasn't unheard of for a kid to lose control of their sled and whack into a mailbox. I had a friend in elementary school named Cody, and he skateboarded down Little Killer Hill. There's Big Killer Hill, Little Killer Hill, and it's the hot hill opposite Killer Hill, who fell down and came to school next. He was out for a few days with bandages and scabs all over, just completely wrecked him. Killer Hill, though, it's just a hill. It isn't nearly the steepest hill in the neighborhood, and it is by no means the tallest hill I've ever been on. But the ominousness of Killer Hill has stayed with me all my life. Like I said, I'd probably still never bike down it. And whenever I'm home and jogging around the neighborhood, I always carefully walk down Killer Hill. Killer Hill is something I know, and I don't need to be afraid of. I'm very capable of going down it. And there are a lot of other things that are like this in our lives, things that simply have the appearance of difficulty and almost the promise of pain, and they become more intimidating in our minds than they actually are. Now, luckily, no one has ever made me go down Killer Hill, but sometimes we don't have the decision of whether or not we're going to go through something. It just happens to us. Whenever these things happen, we have a choice of whether or not we're going to rely on God. And there's a story in the Bible about a guy who wasn't as intimidating as everyone thought. Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, was a powerful guy. There are a lot of pharaohs. They only call him Pharaoh ever, so it's hard to know which one. But the Pharaoh I'm talking about was the one right before Moses' time, so before Joseph, or after Israel, but before Moses. So he was a powerful guy, and in his kingdom was one of the greater ones in the area of his time. And when the people of Israel were sojourning in Egypt, when they were still living there after Jacob, Joseph, and Judah, and the rest of their ancestors had passed on, Pharaoh got scared. Pharaoh realized there were a lot of Israelites, and he worried that if the Israelites ever wanted to fight them, the sheer numbers of the Israelites could defeat Egypt. So he made them his slaves. But the Israelites never realized that they had numbers on their side, and Pharaoh became less of a person and more of a scary idea. And this was all part of God's master plan for Israel to help show them that they need to rely on him, because God only has master plans. He doesn't just try things and see if it works out for the best. He has a bigger picture in mind than we do. Even Pharaoh's rise to power was built up hundreds of years earlier by God through one of Israel's sons. And as we read in Exodus 9, I'll quote, "But for this purpose I have raised you up," you being Pharaoh, "to show you my power, that my name may be proclaimed in all the earth." And so, after Egypt makes slaves of the Israelites, we read in Exodus 2:24, "And the people of Israel groaned because of their slavery and cried out for help. Their cry for rescue from slavery came up to God, and God heard their groaning. And then in the next chapter, God finds Moses and tells him, "Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I have observed you, what has been done to you in Egypt, and I promise that I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, and all the otherites, a land flowing with milk and honey." And it would be nice if Israel got the picture and went along with this heartily with God and Moses, but they were still afraid of Pharaoh. If you read in Exodus 6, starting in verse 6, God, just to give a quick summary before this, Pharaoh had taken away sort of the privileges of the foremen of the Israelites and made it harder for them to do work, and the foremen had come to Moses and Aaron and said, like, what have you done to us? It would be better if you didn't talk at all to Pharaoh. Like, this is only making life worse. And Moses relayed this to God and said, things aren't going good for the Israelites now. And this is what God's reply to Moses was. "Say therefore to the people of Israel, I am the Lord, and I will bring you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. And I will deliver you from slavery to them, and I will redeem you with an outstretched arm and with great acts of judgment. I will take you to be my people, and I will be your God. And you shall know that I am the Lord your God, who has brought you out from under the burdens of the Egyptians. I will bring you into the land that I swore to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And I will give it to you as for possession. I am the Lord." It would be good if the people of Israel said, "Sounds good," and just went along with it. That's not how it reads. And so after that, immediately it says, "Moses spoke thus to the people of Israel, but they did not listen to Moses, because of their broken spirit and harsh slavery." And we can read this now and say, come on guys, it's going to be okay. But we know the end of the story. We know that God has their backs. And after this, there are 10 plagues, and we're all aware of the show, that they show the Egyptians and the Israelites how powerful he really is. And after these, Pharaoh has to actually say to them that they can go before Israel is convinced that they can leave. And after all that, when Pharaoh changes his heart and comes after them in the wilderness with his army, the Israelites say to Moses, again in chapter 14, verse 11, "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that if you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? And what have you done to us in bringing us out of Egypt? Is not this what we have said to you in Egypt? Leave us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." And again, we know the end of the story. How God parts the Red Sea and saves Israel again. But we can find ourselves in similar situations where there are big and scary things that we don't know how to escape, whether it's school, bullies, killer hills, work, sickness, loss, really anything. But God always had their back, and God always has our back. And our fear that God isn't going to do something is the scary part. So when I finally got my bike, as a 10-year-old, I actually got it from Seth's younger cousin, Jane. It was a girl's bike, and it did have training wheels, and it had training wheels for longer than I'm willing to admit. My dad can attest to this. He's here. God is sort of like training wheels in our life. They're there to keep us from falling and hurting ourselves, although we can still manage to do that. As long as your things are going well, you don't even realize they're supporting you. And at some points, we don't think we need them. Now, even though with those training wheels, I was not going down Killer Hill because they weren't going to do very much good. In the same way, when we're going out through things in our lives that come to different sorts of hurts and bruises, we may think that God wasn't much good through all of that. But God isn't going to keep us from all hurts. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but one of them is that we need help learn. And with that thought, I'd like to close with reading Hebrews chapter 12, verses 1 through 11. "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, Let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so you will not grow weary and lose heart. In your struggle against sin, you have not yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. And have you completely forgotten the word of encouragement that addresses you as a father addresses his son? It says, "My son, do not make light of the Lord's discipline, and do not lose heart when he rebukes you, because the Lord disciplines the one he loves and chastens everyone he accepts as his son." Endure hardship as discipline. God is treating you as his children. For what children are not disciplined by their father? If you are not disciplined, and everyone undergoes discipline, then you are not legitimate, not true sons and daughters at all. Moreover, we have had human fathers who disciplined us, and we respected them for it. How much more should we submit to the Father of spirits and live? They disciplined us for a little while, and they thought best. But God disciplines us for our good, in order that we may share in his holiness. Now, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it.